Hall of Famer Bob Holt. So, Bob, I mean, usually you're the one that's writing about people, and you got written about yesterday. Does that make you feel uncomfortable, or were you okay with that?
Well, it's definitely flattering and humbling, but it was a little weird. Steve Sullivan was nice enough to come up from Little Rock, and he did some interviews with all of us, and it was weird. I've written dozens of these stories on guys going into the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame or the UA Hall of Honor, or different things. Nolan Richardson going into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame, Moncrief's going in. So I'm not comparing myself to those guys by any stretch of the imagination, but it was kind of weird. It was nice, but I like it the other way around.
Yeah, I mean, nobody gets into sportscasting or sports writing because you think you're going to go into a Hall of Fame or something. It's just, you like being around sports, you like writing about sports, and it feels natural to you. And I think anybody that's followed your career or read any of your work in the years, knows that this feels natural to you. Were you always going to be a sports writer? Was this like your childhood goal?
I'm not positive when it kind of hit on me. I went to such a small high school in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. It was the University Lab School, but I actually could play sports for them. If I'd gone to a big school, like let's say Fayetteville High, I never could have made any of the varsity teams. But it became pretty clear I wasn't going to be able to play sports beyond my little high school, and I always enjoyed them. I liked writing. Maybe it was fortuitous that I lived in Missouri, and University of Missouri had a really good J school, and I'd been on the campus a couple times for football games when I was in high school. Had a friend whose dad was nice enough to take us to a couple games, who was a Mizzou grad. He was an agriculture school grad. But so I don't know, it just all kind of came together. But I guess sometime when I was in high school, I decided that's what I'd like to do.
But the job that you got out of college is the job you still have. I mean, it's in this industry, like that's like unheard of right
rare.
now. So how did it? I mean, it makes sense to go from the J school at Missouri to the covering Razorback athletics. Were there other opportunities? How did you decide that this was the opportunity that you wanted to take, and how did the opportunity come to you?
Well, it was a long time ago, but to the best of my recollection, it was funny. I had roommates that they were accounting majors and different things, and most of my friends had jobs when we graduated. I worked at this. It's funny. Missouri back then was in the Big Eight, and there was this thing. I don't know if they still do this. They were the Big Eight accounting firms, and one of my friends had interned with them over the summer. And he had a job, lined up, and maybe somebody else was going to grad school, and somebody else had a teaching job. Somebody else, she was, nursing school, and they had jobs lined up at the hospitals in St. Louis. And I'm like, man, what am I going to do? So I'm back there home, sending out resumes and stuff. And I can't remember the name of the paper, but it was in Coffeyville, Kansas, covering Coffeyville, which, was a pretty good junior college. I guess it still is. And then a friend of mine, Jeff Krupsaw, who worked at what was then the Arkansas Democrat, we'd gone to Mizzou together. I guess he was a year ahead of me. And he let me know about the job. And so I remember driving from Cape Girardeau down to Little Rock, sleeping on his couch, and interviewing for the job. This is before Wally became a sports editor. It was a guy named Todd Gurley hired me ultimately, and I got the job and spent a couple weeks in Little Rock kind of getting familiar with the paper and things. And I remember taking out these huge volumes. You could go to the library. We had a library at the paper, but also you could go to the public library and pull out bound volumes of the Gazette or the Democrat, or I think that was pretty common in most local libraries. You could read the local paper. They had just taken literally pages of paper and put them into these books. Now it's all on microfilm or online, I guess, and just reading up all this stuff on the Razorbacks, and then going up there to Fayetteville. And I don't know what that says about me. I had the same job for all this time. I don't know if that's good or bad.
I'd look at it as a good thing, Bob. And when you get in the Hall of Fame, that obviously means that you, one, did a great job, but also that you were appreciated, and you really embodied what your readers wanted to read. They obviously liked you, so they kept reading you. What was one of the goals when you set it out to be a writer, a sports writer, that you had that made you have such long staying power? Like, you kind of go back and think, if there's one thing that I always made sure I did, it was this.
Well, I know moving up here, you had the Gazette and you had the Democrat, and of course you had the Northwest Arkansas Times up here, and I guess it was the Springdale News. But Nate Allen has become a great friend. Nate, and he was a Missouri grad a few years before I was. But Nate just had the beat just covered like a blanket. I mean, he knew if somebody sneezed, last night, he knew about it. And he was probably right about it. That's one thing I learned from reading everything in the Democrat, and I read the bound volumes of the Gazette. I guess that's what you call them, bound volumes, is that, if a second string, right quarter Phil Elson sprained his ankle in practice in preseason camp, that was a story, And it kind of hit me that, man, if whatever these guys do, it's a story. And so I kind of tried to, my main goal initially was just not to get my butt kicked by Nate every day, because he had I'm serious, it's a heart attack. He just had everything, And so it was very motivating, to work hard, because there were a lot of days, of course, this is way before the internet. I mean, you got the papers delivered and you picked it up to see, what was in the Gazette? What did Nate have? Oh man, he beat me on that. I better get my act together so I don't get beat all week, So that was very motivating. And we were competitive, but Nate was a really good guy, too. Is a really good guy. And he was helpful. Like, if I was trying to catch a certain player after practice and I wasn't sure what the guy looked like, a lot of people, honestly, a young guy like me comes in and you're an established guy, you might say, I'm going to play a trick on this rookie. And I'll tell him, yeah, that's so-and-so, and it won't be, and he'll go up and embarrass himself. Nate never did anything like that. He was always, helpful in a competitive way. He wasn't going to hand me stuff, but he also wasn't going to make, be a jerk either. And so I always appreciate that about Nate. My initial reaction was just, to try to keep up with what Nate was doing with the Gazette, and that was very motivating. And after that, I just wanted to, cultivate relationships. And honestly, it was easier back then. There was less media and the accessibility was better and you got to know people better. And so I just tried really hard to get to know people and, operate in such a way that they could trust me. I mean, if they told me something off the record, stayed off the record. And and just try to tell good stories, be fair, because sometimes you're doing features, sometimes you're doing breaking news. Sometimes you're having to write about tough situations, people getting fired or people getting demoted or players getting injured or players getting in trouble. And, just try to do that in a professional way,
And now, Bob, you've obviously gotten to cover a lot of great stuff. What is there one that sticks out in your mind as your favorite event that you've ever gotten to write about and cover live in person?
Well, probably a back-to-back run by the basketball team in '94 and '95. They won it all in Charlotte in '94, and that was very exciting. I felt a lot of pressure too. Writing a national championship game. Arkansas had never played it, and then for the national championship in basketball, and so and those tip-offs are late, on a Monday night, and the stories were going on 1A. That was a lot of pressure in my mind. And when sports stories are going out on 1A, that's pressure. And then of course the next year you basically had the same starting lineup back. And then they made another great run, got Seattle and got beat. But I do remember coming back from Seattle, covering Final Four runs back-to-back years. And that's when Duke was in this run of going to the Final Four seemingly every year. And I'm trying to remember how old I was. I guess I was in my late 30s. And I was just exhausted, mentally and physically from the travel and just trying to come up with stories. And because you're thinking, well, what can I write about Corliss Williamson or Scotty Thurman or Corey Beck I have already written? It was a bit of a challenge. I just remember thinking, how do those guys who cover Duke go to these Final Fours every freaking year? And of course, I haven't been back to a Final Four since. I'd sure like to cover another one, although it's been a lot of fun. I hadn't covered Elite Eights until the last 2 years. I hadn't been on the road in Elite Eight till this year since '95, so that was a lot of fun. But yeah, probably those Final Four runs. But got to cover a lot of Cotton Bowls. That's a really great event. The College World Series, NCAA Track Championships. I've been really fortunate to cover a lot of great events. I added it up, and I think I have been to 37 states covering Arkansas athletics in one way or another, and Puerto Rico and Mexico. And assuming I go to the BYU game this year in Utah, that'll make 38 states.
That's awesome, wow. Bob. So I noticed you didn't put the SEC baseball tournament in Hoover on your list of favorite things that you've ever covered. I know you've been to Hoover, but, man, I mean, we've got this whole situation with rain just makes it kind of, I don't know, not fun. Just sitting around. I love being at baseball parks, but just sitting around waiting for it to stop raining for 3 days in a row. I don't know. It's just not that much fun.
Yeah, Tom Murphy and Charlie Kaijo from our paper down there covering the event, and God bless them, everybody down there. I'm here covering the track meet here in Fayetteville this week on the West Prelims. Yeah, the SEC baseball tournament's a great event, but you're right, the rain can get really frustrating. I noticed the Big 12 is playing in Arlington, and I can't ever honestly, and you probably have a better feel for this than I do. I'm sure you do. If the SEC would ever move out of Hoover, I think they've got a pretty long-term contract there. Because a few years ago, you had cities like Memphis and maybe some town in Florida were trying to bid on it. But it sure makes you wonder about if you could play in a dome stadium somewhere, in Atlanta or. I guess you probably can't play baseball in the Mercedes Stadium. It'd be like playing in the Coliseum or something. Hit a 250-foot home run or something back when the Dodgers first moved to L.A. But, boy, it just seems like rain in the South in the spring just go together, And so I don't know. But, yeah, I don't envy you guys. Is there any word if and when Arkansas is going to play today?
No, I don't think they're going to play today. I think they'll play tomorrow morning. Yeah, I think it'll be tomorrow morning against either A&M or Florida. Yeah. Hey, not only do we have the Super Regional going on, but really just down the street at the McConnell Center, you got the West Preliminary Championships, the Women's Track Championships, or the Women's Preliminary Championships get underway today, right?
Right. They had the men yesterday, and the men will resume Friday with those who advance. And then the women are today and Saturday. So, yeah, you got over 100 schools. I think the coaches said it's something like 2,000 athletes.
Wow.
So it's an economic boon for the region, I'll tell you that. I don't know what the impact is exactly, but it's got to be in the millions of dollars when you think about hotel rooms and restaurants and people buying gas and, whatever else, going shopping or something while they're here. It's a great – you see a lot of great – you're going to see athletes, obviously, that advance on to Eugene for the track nationals, and a lot of these kids will be in the Olympics. You have, athletes from all over the world. Some will be competing for the U.S. in the Olympics. Some will be competing for other countries in the Olympics. But if you like track and field, this is a good place to be this week. And it's kind of chilly and it's been rainy, but I think I think the rain's supposed to clear out by tonight when most of the run events start at 6:00.
Good. So they can have a lot of fun out there while we're sitting here in Hoover waiting for the other teams to play baseball.
Partners at BetOnline continue to be the #1 source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, including updated odds on the NBA playoffs, fights, and even next season's futures. And don't forget that the MLB is back as well. Who are you picking to win the World Series? BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering needs, including live betting and your favorite Vegas casino and poker games. It's super easy to get started, so head to the website today or use your mobile device to join and use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.